Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Your Mark on the World show. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe, and our guest today is Rob Holzer, who is the CEO and founder of Matter Unlimited. Rob, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Rob, you do some really amazing work. I confess almost a sense of jealousy at the opportunities you have. You work in branding and advertising marketing, and you help some great organizations. I think of the TED people, the Clinton Global Initiative, and others, and trying to help them brand themselves. But I really think it's a wonderful and exciting place to be. What's your experience been? How do you enjoy this?
This has definitely been a great gift to do the work that we're doing, where I get to use what I know. My mom always said, write what you know, and I get to use this kind of work that I've learned over the years and apply it for companies or for the nonprofits and foundations that we work with to have real positive impact. And I think that it's something that a lot of people in our business, in the conversations that I have, really they really look for in the work, and it's sometimes hard to find in marketing and advertising.
Oh yeah, it is. I think of the exercise of branding as being so, when it's done right, it's about really reaching into an organization and helping to define an identity, right? And when you layer on purpose onto that, I imagine that it in some ways makes it harder, in some ways more difficult. What's your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, in the traditional sense of branding, it was to try and uncover, or even in many cases create, a story for a company and then wrap the communications around that. The world that we live in today, it's digital, it's transparent, and companies really don't have the ability to sort of manufacture the stories as much as they used to. So a lot of what we talk about and what we work with our clients around is, how do we uncover the truths inside the organization that they can authentically live by, or start to move their organizations towards, and then how do we use digital and advertising and marketing in a modern context to start expressing and telling that story. So we talk a lot, and another publication called us the anti-agency, and I love that because in some ways we are, because we talk less about advertising and much more about communication and how you can tell a story through these multiple media that you can reach consumers and the people that interact with your brand, and start that dialogue and start to have a much more authentic connection to what we sometimes call that North Star, or your brand purpose.
You talk about transparency and authentic relationships, and that really is such a meaningful place, and it's so important for brands that want to have an identity that includes purpose or social good. And what's the process like for helping them find a purpose that is authentic, not just one that fits strategically, but that is genuinely authentic, and that will, and then build that consensus among the internal actors?
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge, and I think that what we found, and I've certainly found in my work, is that when you actually dive into some of these companies, and particularly the ones that have been around for quite a while, they have a lot of historical connection to purpose. Whether it was the founders or the originators. I did a lot of work with GE for many years on the Eco-Imagination project, and what we found is when you go back, you see that these companies were founded by people that cared. If you look at a Unilever, for example, it was someone who wanted to bring hygiene to 1800s Europe that didn't really have cleanliness as a part of their livelihood, and so the company was founded to try and do those things. And I think that over the past 50, 60 years, as companies became bigger, and public and driven much more around a short-termism kind of mentality of moving from quarter to quarter and profit-driven, that companies have gotten away from that. But now we find ourselves in a time where it's critical. It's our perspective that it is absolutely critical for your brand to start to understand its impact larger than from a singular profit-driven perspective, and what is your impact on your employees, the people who work for you, your community, and how does that translate into long-term growth. And companies are very much looking at this, and we have the privilege of being in boardrooms with higher level executives that it's their jobs to be thinking this way, and they are very aware of this. And then it's just about going about the process of reconnecting or connecting once again to those core elements that define their purpose. And again, purpose in a context that we talk about that goes beyond just we're in business to provide a service or provide a product, but we're in business to improve people's lives. And more, especially with younger generations now who are the lifeblood of any of these organizations to attract and retain the best talent possible. People want to work for a company that they find is serving the world in a positive way, not just it's going to give me a great career and make me a lot of money, because that definition of success is shifting, thankfully, in this direction. And the C-suite's very aware of that. And when you come down to it, in any company, it is individuals and people that are sitting around those tables and making those decisions that then affect a larger group of people. And I think in our experience, we found it takes brave leadership, which that never really seems to change. Having brave leaders at the top that understand the implications of this for their companies long term versus in the short term is what we see as a critical ingredient in starting the process of making the change. And by the way, we also say that this change is not something you're going to flip a switch on. It's just going to happen. It's a process, and it's an ongoing process. But these days, you have the ability to take your customers and all your stakeholders, take them on the journey with you. And that's what we work with companies to do, is how do you start to communicate where you're moving towards, and how do you start to tell that story and bring people along for the ride, even with the things you might not be doing well today, or you might not be strong in from a social impact perspective, but that you're committed to moving in that direction, and people are much more willing these days to understand that as long as you can communicate that clearly, and that's where we come in.
Yeah. Have you had prospective clients? I suspect you had no clients that have been in this situation, but have you had prospective clients that have called you and wanted you to wave a magic wand and create the appearance of purpose, the essence of commitment to the global good, where there was no authentic there and had to pass on those opportunities?
Yes, we have, and I think we are a unique agency where we only do this kind of work. We don't take on work that is more traditional, and in my past I did that work at other companies that I had. Because we are 100% mission-driven in this way, our brand integrity relies on the fact that we are not in the business of what I call good washing, or what a lot of people call greenwashing, if it's in the sustainability realm. And we have definitely come across those projects and have turned them down. And our perspective as a company is we want to work with anyone, really. Maybe not anyone, but most companies, because it's our belief that as you start to go down this path, and if you are authentically committed to this kind of evolution or change, it's a snowball effect within an organization, and the ancillary effects are you're attracting and retaining better people, your corporate culture is improving, your ability to innovate improves because you have the right people there with the right mindset to move towards innovation. It's definitely something I experienced in my work with GE for 7 years, watching that company move through this process during the Eco-Imagination project, which was their building a business unit, which now I believe $25 billion business unit for GE on products that are sustainably driven, but the unintended consequences of them doing that work was that their corporate culture shifted. And the way that GE does business today is dramatically different than the way it did, say, 10 years ago. So companies are seeing that, and what our task is to really try and uncover the kind of brave clients that we can see, yes, they are committed, yes, they have the ability, yes, they have their internal leadership aligned around this, and that's a big step as well. But ultimately, it takes those kinds of companies to be thinking down the right path, and we help them through that. But yes, we are always wary for the good washing and steer clear of it.
I want to ask you just a few quick questions before we wrap up. First, who do you look to as a role model, as someone that you admire, that's someone that guides you, that someone who might represent true north for you?
Wow, that's a big question. It's there's so many people in my life that I'm inspired by, absolutely. But when I think about it from a kind of a 30,000-foot view, people like Bill Gates or Warren Buffett or some of the people that have made such impacts in a financial sense, but then have been able to turn their careers towards looking at the impact that they can make on a large scale in the world through business, through what they know, to fund and activate positive social impact and change around the world. That inspires me tremendously, and it's my goal with Matter that we in our industry, which you have amazingly talented and creative people doing really exciting work, that often find themselves reaching a point where they say, well, what have I been doing this all for? Because the work, I can sell another pair of shoes or some more fast food to somebody. I have these conversations all the time, and I think that I created Matter, and the work that we're doing is an example for our industry to say, you can have a successful agency, you can do work that is oriented this way to have impact through what we do through creative development and the kind of things that we're involved in doing. So that to me becomes, hopefully, if we're successful and continue our success, then there could be more matters that would spring up in our industry and can really start to change the world of business in a way that has real impact. Yeah.
Why do you care about purpose? Clearly, there is some element of movement there. It's a growing marketplace, but clearly you're a talented guy. You could be doing a million other things. Why are you focused on good?
Well, I think that's true, and I think that for me in my life, I've been, I'd say, blessed in some way to have reached a point of success. I got to a point where I had a successful agency prior to this. I sold that business, made a lot of money, and had all of those things that were important to me 10, 15 years ago as reaching goals, and then realized through a lot of personal suffering in life that a lot of people will go through that isn't necessarily the end goal. And I think for me in my life, the end goal is to try and find a way to serve the world. And my mom used to say, write what you know. And so when I went and I had a break to think about that after selling my company, I thought, how can I take what I know and what my talents are and apply them in a way that's going to benefit and serve my community, my industry, and then the world at large. And I saw that window as well as business opportunity that can really serve those purposes. And that has been, it's led me into an incredible career and into places working with some incredible people that I probably never would have seen if I had not made this choice. So for me, I think that when people do make this kind of a change, there's sacrifice involved with it, and there's There's definitely other routes and easier paths, probably, but I would say I've never been on a more rewarding path, both personally and professionally, than what we're doing today with Matter.
That's great. Now, Rob, one last thing before you go. As you think about your success in having impact, I want you to give us one tip that we can all apply in our respective careers that would help us have greater impact for good.
Well, I always go by this. There's only one time around this merry-go-round, right? And if you can define your life and understand that in a deep way, that each choice that you're making, whether it's professional or personal, but in your professional life, you are actually making choices. You're making trade-offs potentially, or you're making decisions that can lead you in a direction. And to be as aligned personally with those choices and understand the impact and implications of those choices as you go forward, I think that right there will allow people to open up to more risk for the bigger rewards and find ways that they can align themselves better towards impact. And it doesn't have to be grand, and it doesn't have to be huge, and we all can't be Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. But there are ways within our communities, within our industries, to affect change positively. Whether you are in a large corporation and you are a change maker, that is, there are ways to affect change there. Or if you're looking at new business models and really trying to go the entrepreneurial route, I think that really stepping back and looking at what your goals are for your life will help you to sort of make better decisions on a professional level. At least that was my experience.
Yeah. Well, Rob, thank you very much for being here with us today. Before you go, tell us how people can find you and connect with you to learn more about having you help them in their branding efforts.
Sure. www.makethingsmatter.com is our website, and I believe it's in the article. You can reach us there, and certainly me. I'm very big on social media as far as being active there. So if you want to reach out, @RobMatters is the Twitter handle, and @MatterUnlimited is the company Twitter handle. So please feel free to reach out. I would love to continue the conversation with anyone interested.
Great. Well, Rob, thank you again for joining us today. We wish you every success in your important work.
Thank you so much, Devin.
All righty. Let's do some good.